All right, we're live. It is week 5, which it seems like time is going by really, really fast. Hope everyone's doing well with everything. I've gotten a few emails. I know some people are having some issues. Don't worry about it. I've been really, really busy, so I haven't been able to get back with everybody. But I have read most of everybody's emails to me. So I will try, after I get done with the broadcast here tonight, I'll try to go through and get a few more of those taken care of. So you guys know I'm not totally ditching you and not taking care of you. Anyway, this week, hopefully it will be a little less, a little shorter than last week. But we're going to go over services. Now, last week we installed a couple services and we got them running, and I didn't talk a whole lot about what they are and what they do. I need to open up a terminal. I'm going to get to root by doing sudo-i. And the couple services we installed were MySQL and Apache HTTPD. And the D stands for daemon, and services and daemons are just synonyms for each other. A daemon is a service is a daemon. In the Windows world, they call them services all the time, and in the Linux world, most of the time they're called daemons, or in the Unix world, I should say, not just Linux, because even in OS X, all the other Unixes out there, they're all called usually daemons. And daemons, I don't really remember the origin of the word, but it's just another word for a service. And it used to be, back in the old days, when you're messing with a Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6 or prior, you would be using the word service. And in this case, we'll say HTTPD, and then you can query like status, and then we can start it and stop it. But that's an old legacy thing, and I wanted to bring it up because a lot of Red Hat 6 and CentOS 6 boxes are still out there. There's still a lot of legacy places that will use service. And what that does is it interfaces directly what are called init scripts. And to understand a little bit about how your system boots up, there used to be a daemon called init, and it was short for initialization. It was a service that was the very first service that would start on your computer, and it would start all of the other services. And so init would be the master control of everything. And service was written as a init interface. And those init scripts were usually held in etc. Init.d, and then you can tab there. There's still a few init scripts. In fact, there are 4 on my system. You may have more, may have less, depending on what you've installed, but they're old and they're legacy. Everything newer, Fedora 20, no, it's older than that, 18 or 16 or something like that, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 or CentOS 7 and above they replaced init with systemd. And systemd is just a new and different way of doing things in starting up your Linux system, because you need that root process to start all of the other processes. And systemd has a completely different interface. It's a little bit, I think, more streamlined. I actually really liked the design of it now that I've had quite a while to get used to it. But instead of using init scripts, it uses systemctl to interact with systemd. And even when I did system HTTP start and HTTPD status, it said it was redirecting it because some applications haven't updated and don't know about systemd yet. So they wrote this wrapper that says when you call service, what you really want is systemctl. And that's the new way of doing things. So if you do systemctl, and then you put your verb after that, so status httpd. Too many T's there. It does the same thing. And I stopped it earlier, so I'll start it again with this. And so it's just a different way of dealing with the way your system starts up. And there are different what are called run levels. So in Linux, originally, back in the day, and this even goes back to Unix, before Linux was even invented, there were the concept of run levels, meaning your system could run different sets of programs and services based on the type of run level you wanted. There are a few that are reserved. One is reserved for shutdown. So if you want to shut down your system, you do init 1. 6 is reserved for restart. So if you want to restart your computer, you do an init 6. If you want to go into single user mode, which in the case of you forget your password. I don't think you can actually you can do it anymore in single user mode, which is a great security feature. They disabled getting into single user mode without a password, but before it was how you reset passwords on Linux systems without needing a password. You could physically have access to the device, go into single user mode, and it would go in, or you know what, I just lied. Run level 1 is single user mode. It's run level 0 that is reserved for shutdown. I misspoke earlier. I'm sorry. Run level 0 is for shutdown. Run level 1 is for single user mode. And run level 1 will let you basically load just Linux and a couple basic tools. And the whole idea around run level 1 is that if your system is totally, completely horked up, you can get back to something useful using run level 1 because it gives you a basic set of tools and, you know, basic to get your system running again. Then for servers, generally speaking, it's kind of a generally agreed rule that run level 3 is used for non-graphical servers. So if you just want a server sitting in the corner and you don't need a fancy user interface with a mouse, you just need a keyboard and a text terminal, well, it's perfect for that. You run that in run level 3. And then the other convention that's agreed upon is run level 5 is for a GUI. So when you want to boot up to a full GUI, you run level 5, and it's generally everything that would be enabled on a system would be enabled in run level 5. Run levels 2 and 4 are rarely, if ever, used. I've personally never seen a system that has used either of those. Pretty much all you're ever going to encounter is run level 5. So just for information. Now, the reason I bring this up is because systemctl, like I said, replaces init. And originally, if you wanted to shut your system down, you would just do init 0. And this still works. I'm not going to shut down my system or go into a different run level. But you would use init, and then the run level you would want to go to. And init, the system service that would run everything, would pair back all the services or shut down all the services or restart your computer for you. And so it was pretty nice. Now, with systemctl, you have similar features. And we're going to bring back our good friend double-help, go over all of the different commands systemctl has. There's a lot. You know, right here it has list units, list sockets, list timers. You can start, stop, reload, restart, and try restart, reload or restart, reload or try restart, all these sorts of different services. You can even kill services, do a lot of other things. There's also enabling, disabling, and doing other things with services. I'm pretty sure you can shut things down too. Oh yeah, right here. So there's systemctl halt, power off, reboot, And then there's all sorts of different other options you can do with your system. So it gives you a lot more flexibility and a lot more power, and it's one tool, whereas originally you had a lot of different tools and a lot of different ways of interfacing with init. And that was one of the big criticisms around init and why they wrote something different, is that it was really disjointed, a bunch of just hacky scripts that were all mashed together in a weird, funky way. And now it's a very, very uniform and useful system. Also, before there was no way with init to put your system into suspend or hibernate, and now you can. So you can actually shut down your computer, restart your computer, all from the command line. And there are other commands that do this, like shutdown. But at the end of the day, just like with service, shutdown uses a systemctl wrapper to work. So systemctl is really powerful. I think we also went over last week where you enable a system to start to run on startup, and so what you're doing when you do like a systemctl enable mysqld, what you're doing, what is it? Oh, it's MariaDB, isn't it? You're saying for this to start on run level 5. And we're running in run level 5, you can tell, because we have a GUI. And I didn't do anything to start it. You can start a GUI in run level 3, but you have to do it manually, and it's a pain. But by default, everything goes in run level 5. That's an important thing to know. And when I hit enable here, it enables it so that when I hit run level 5, MariaDB is included in the services that run. And same thing when I do that for HTTPD. HTTPD, can't type. And that just makes sure that it runs on startup. I also wanted to go over FirewallD very briefly, because FirewallD is, along with systemd, a way to interface with your firewall in a much more modern and streamlined way. I'm still a pretty big fan of the old firewall system, which was called IP tables. I can do some pretty cool things in IP tables that isn't quite as easy with FirewallD, but for a personal firewall, FirewallD is amazing, and especially like for a personal or a server firewall, it's great. If you're making a Linux router or a Linux system for routing or switching, FirewallD is probably not the best still, but it's very, very good otherwise. So FirewallD, I'm going to do a double dash help on this too, just to kind of give an overview of what FirewallD is. It's a lot more simple in terms of its help, which is unfortunate because it's got a lot of powerful options. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. I expected more out of you, FirewallD. Let's see if I can remember this from memory. Firewall. Yeah, I think. You know what? This is where I go to the inner tubes, and we're going to go to actually FirewallD. They have a really good documentation page, which is right here. It's at fedoraproject.org/wiki/firewallD. And they go over what FirewallD is. I'm not going to go over this entire article. Basically, what I want to make sure is that if you guys had any problems with getting your Apache working, it could be because of the firewall. Also, if you wanted to host it outside, like on the internet or even in an internal network, you would need to use FirewallD to open up the ports. So this goes over installing it and using it. That's why I wasn't doing it right. It's not FirewallD --help. It's Firewall CMD. Documentation's great to look at. This is what I was looking for. So it gives a lot of information about what Firewall CMD does. It interfaces directly with Firewall D. You can add chain, get chains, and this is where, like, if you want to add a rule, you can do an add masquerade, which is useful for if you're building a router. You can build your own router with Linux. It's actually pretty easy. In years past in Linux, we've actually built routers. It gets a little complicated with virtual machines, and not a lot of people have a whole network to work with, so it gets really theoretical. So I'm probably not going to have you guys do that this year, unfortunately, because it's actually pretty cool. Anyway, let's say I wanted to add a service, right? I'll just see if I can do this. I'm going to do firewall, add service, HTTPD. Okay, so that just allowed, I'm going to also make it permanent. So there we go. That should add the firewall rule for my web service to run, so now anybody on the outside can, at least outside of my computer on this same network, can access my website, which is kind of cool. And this will be very useful. I'm going to segue right now into installing Cockpit. We're going to do a DNF install Cockpit and Cockpit not Firewall, the Network Manager. I should, at some point, go over how awesome the Network Manager is and why I wish Windows would have something like it, because I can create separate profiles in Network Manager and just switch it between them on the fly and not have to like different static IP addresses and switch between them just by like 2 mouse clicks. If anyone's ever set up, if any of you guys have set up static IPs on Windows, you know what a pain that is. And you use Firewall D a couple times, and you don't want to go back to Windows. Anyway, I've got that installed. I hit DNF install Cockpit Network Manager. Sorry, got a little tongue twisted there. And then we're going to make sure that it will run. So we're going to do systemctl status of Cockpit. It's dead. So I want to start it. And now it should be running when I say status. It says it's running, but how do I get to it? I honestly have no idea. So, to be able to tell, I'm going to do a netstat, and this isn't part of what I planned, but it's good to know. ANTP, and I'm going to grep for Cockpit. And it's running at port 9090. Cool. I could have just as easily Googled that, or I just found out right here. Netstat shows you what ports. Nope, net. It shows you what ports are open on your computer, and that's actually pretty useful. A shows all ports that are on my computer. N shows I forget. And T I forget. I always just remember AMP, and it gives me the program that's running. For example, Chrome, and Cockpit, and MySQLD, and HTTPD, and cupsd. Cupsd is actually it's owned by Apple, but it's the Common Unix Print System. It's your printing service in Linux. It's actually kind of neat. So Cockpit's running, and it says it's running on port 9090 right here. So if I hit localhost 9090, it gets me to a web service page for my system. And this is pretty neat because it's a graphical interface to my computer. And I'm going to log in with my try root. So I log in. It tells me what my hardware is. I got a Latitude 6430. And I've got my asset tag here. This is the service tag that's on the bottom of my computer. What BIOS revision I'm using, what my operating system is, what my host name is. I can even join this to a Windows domain if I want to. I can restart it from this, and then it shows me some useful information like CPU, memory, disk I/O, and network traffic. And you can see because I'm broadcasting on the internet right now, the network traffic's actually fairly high. I'm sure that's in BPS. Not sure. We can see services here and what's running and what's not. So this is inactive dead. Harvest VM cores for ABRT. It's dead. Not really sure what that does, honestly. We got Bluetooth service. It's running. Bumblebee is activating. That's weird. Thought I disabled that. Cups is running. Cups is my print system, like we talked about. Then we have containers. This isn't really pertinent. Docker. If you guys have ever heard of Docker, you can actually install Docker and you can manage Docker containers in here. I can look at my system logs. For example, errors, warnings, notices. Similar to like an event viewer on Windows. This is a nice graphical web interface. And then we can look at storage, see how much of my disk is being used. It's a solid state disk, 111 gigs. I've got a DVD ROM in here. And then it shows some of my storage logs, and the sizes of my file systems and how much is free. And you can see there's quite a bit free on my home partition, my boot partition, and my root partition. It's pretty nice. Networking, similar thing, gives me logs. For example, FirewallD is giving me errors. Don't know why. That's fine. And then there are other things like I can add accounts and even have a terminal right here that I can access over the web. So this would be useful if you had a fleet of 100 different boxes and you didn't want to SSH into every one of them. You could come into this and do simple work, and even if you needed to, then come drop it into a shell, and this is a fully functional shell inside of your web browser, and this is all HTML5. Really, I'm actually impressed with the speed of it. Even though it's on my local system, like that's very responsive. It seems to keep up with my keystrokes. For example, let's do a system CTL status of Cockpit. That was quick. I don't know if you could hear my keystrokes, but like it literally was just as responsive as the terminal on my system. So that's what Cockpit is. That's what services are. Hopefully, I didn't get too wild and crazy with explaining things. I hope everything came through okay. If anyone has any questions, email me. Like I said, I'm going to try to get back with everyone here at the end of this. And, man, I did that in 23 minutes. I'm rocking and rolling. I wanted to give you guys something a little easier. I know there are a few things that, a few people haven't gotten everything caught up. So I wanted to give a little break for those of you who are caught up and a little bit of a slack for those of you who need to catch up. I'm not a real stickler for everything. I do want to make sure, though, that you guys are communicating with me. If you have any problems, any questions, concerns, do let me know. Even if I don't reply immediately, I do see that, and I do take that into consideration. So, cool. That's it. That's all I have for this week. If you have any questions, type them here. I'm probably going to go offline unless you guys have some stuff that's pressing. Don't see anything. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my broadcast. I'll stay probably screen sharing here for a little bit. I might just go to nothing and just have audio. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching.